My name's Ethan. I'm 48. Not the kind of guy who usually talks much about feelings or drama. I run a business, I work hard, and I always believed in doing right by the people I care about. For most of my adult life, I thought I had a good thing going. I built a company from the ground up, put everything into it, and I thought I was doing it for us. For my wife, Samantha, and our 2 daughters. Samantha's 45. She's always been the kind of woman people notice. That's just a fact. Beautiful, stylish, sharp-tongued, and knew how to light up a room when she wanted to. And Tyler? My best friend since college, or so I thought. CFO of the company, right-hand man for 2 decades. You'd never think to keep your guard up around someone like that. Not when you've shared late nights building a business together, eaten Thanksgiving dinners at each other's homes, stood by each other through losses, layoffs, and growing pains. Turns out, I should have paid more attention. What broke everything wasn't just betrayal. It was the look on her face when I walked into the bedroom and saw them. Together. In our house. In our bed. She didn't panic. She didn't apologize. She smirked. It's funny, the little things you remember in moments like that. I remember she had one of my old flannel shirts draped across the back of the chair. The one she always used to steal when she got cold. There was an empty glass on the nightstand. Hers, from the way it still had a lemon wedge in it. And Tyler, he didn't even flinch. Just sat there, like he was waiting for me to get mad, or leave, or collapse. All he did was shrug. A shrug. That was the moment something broke in me. You spend your life trying to be the good guy, build a future, protect the people you love, provide. And then, in one breath, it's all twisted into something you barely recognize. She didn't cry, didn't even try to deny it. In fact, later she told me I'd made it too easy, that I'd been distracted by the company for too long. She said it like I was the fool for trusting her. Maybe I was. But none of that prepared me for what came next. The legal part. See, we live in one of those states where no-fault divorce means the court doesn't care why the marriage ended. Doesn't care about cheating. All that matters is who owns what on paper. And on paper, I own 90% of the company. Samantha was legally entitled to half of my share. That's 45%. Tyler, being the CFO, already owned 10% from a previous agreement we made during a company expansion. Do the math. That's 55%. Which means control. Which means they could do whatever they wanted with the business, my business. And yes, I still had 45% left. I could have held on to it. I could have fought. But I knew Samantha and Tyler. They weren't in this for the long haul. They didn't understand what made that company work. They just saw dollar signs and a chance to cash out. If I held on, they'd tear it apart piece by piece, just to squeeze me out. So I did the unthinkable. I gave her the remaining 45%. Voluntarily. But not without conditions. See, I didn't ask for this meeting because I wanted to beg, or cry, or rant. I didn't ask to meet because I missed her. I asked because I had one last card to play, and I wanted to look both of them in the eye when I laid it on the table. I asked them to meet me at my lawyer's office. Clean, neutral ground. Professional. No yelling. No drama. Just paperwork and quiet vengeance. Samantha agreed right away. She probably thought I'd finally given up, that I wanted to make peace, maybe shake hands and disappear into the shadows. And Tyler? He probably came for the same reason. They were smug, triumphant, ready to sign the final papers and take over everything I'd built with my bare hands. They had no idea what I had planned. We met at my attorney's office on a Tuesday afternoon. Honestly, I just wanted it done. All the legal drama, the paperwork, the humiliations, I wanted it all behind me. This meeting was supposed to be the final step. A quick session to sign everything, close the chapter, and move on. I thought it would just be the 3 of us and our lawyers. Keep it clean and quiet. But when I walked into the conference room, it felt like I had walked into a tribunal. 8 people. 8. Samantha was there, of course, dressed like she was heading to a charity gala instead of the conclusion of a 24-year marriage. Hair perfectly styled, nails done, face unreadable. Beside her was Tyler, cool as ever in his navy jacket, scrolling his phone like he had more important places to be. Her personal attorney sat on her right, some slick-talking corporate type with glasses that looked more expensive than my truck. His assistant, a guy who couldn't have been older than 28, sat beside him with a laptop already open. On my side of the table was my attorney, Frank, a man who's been with me through acquisitions, lawsuits, expansion deals, you name it. Tough guy, smart as hell, but today he looked tired. And I don't blame him. He brought his paralegal, Janice, who'd been organizing the documents. Then there was me, sitting at the far end of the table, feeling like a stranger at my own funeral. Everyone was quiet. No small talk. No good afternoons. Just the rustling of paper, the sound of a keyboard, and the tension pressing down on the room like a vice. You could hear every breath. No one looked at each other directly. It was all sideways glances, tight lips, and eyes fixed on folders. A court confirmation had come in about an hour before. The divorce was finalized. Every signature from every motion had been reviewed and accepted. 24 years of my life, gone with a stamped envelope and a few digital files. There was a pitcher of water on the side table, half full. No one touched it. The clock on the wall ticked loud enough to be annoying. Then Mark stood up. I hadn't seen him in years. He was the company's external legal consultant back in the day when we were just starting out and trying to secure our first licensing deals. We'd played golf once. He knew my kids' names. But today, Mark looked like he didn't want to be anywhere near that room. He had that half-hearted lawyer smile on his face, the one that says, I don't like what I'm about to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. He cleared his throat and held the manila folder in both hands. It is my duty, he said, looking down, to inform you that you are hereby relieved of your duties as president and CEO of the company, effective immediately. No ceremony. No explanation. No appreciation. Just cold words in a neutral tone, like I was being asked to hand over the keys to a rental car. I didn't say anything. I didn't even blink. I just sat there with my hands folded on the table, looking straight ahead. Samantha's lawyer scribbled something on a yellow pad. The assistant typed faster. Tyler leaned back in his chair like he'd just closed a deal. One leg over the other, fingers locked behind his head. He looked relaxed, in control, comfortable. Maybe now, in his mind, he was the boss. I couldn't help but notice the way Samantha glanced at him. It wasn't affection. It was confidence. Like she believed she had finally climbed out from under my shadow. She crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap, that little smirk still tugging at the corners of her mouth. That look she always gave me when she thought she'd won an argument. Mark laid the papers down in front of me, turning them so they were already facing the right direction. My name was typed in bold on the top, termination of executive employment, effective immediately. Nothing more personal than a form letter to remind you you're out. Will I have access to my office? I asked, still looking at the document. Mark paused. You'll be allowed in under supervision. A company representative will be present while you gather any personal belongings. Time and date to be coordinated. I nodded once. Fine. Frank didn't say much. He leaned forward, reading the fine print with a pen tapping against the table. We'd already discussed this part. There were no surprises, at least not for now. Tyler said something under his breath to Samantha, and they both chuckled. I don't know what it was. Didn't care. I sat there staring at that table, the glossy wood surface reflecting just enough light to show the edges of every crease in the paper. The whole room felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else's life unravel. Like I was just another spectator. But I wasn't. It was my life. My company. My marriage. My supposed best friend. And now, they were all sitting on the other side of the table, waiting for me to leave the stage. No one offered a handshake. No one thanked me for building the place that paid all their salaries. No one even said goodbye. I nodded slowly. Thanks, Mark. I've already cleared out my desk. We'll talk about the dismissal later. He looked up from the folder, surprised. There's nothing listed under your termination terms, Ethan. No severance. No benefits. I raised an eyebrow. Really? I leaned back a little in my chair. Not even a handshake and a branded mug after 25 years? He looked uncomfortable, glanced at Samantha's attorney, and then shrugged like his hands were tied. Of course they were. He was just following instructions. But hearing that there was nothing, no acknowledgement, no payout, no transition plan, well, that was something else. I straightened up. All right then, I said, clearing my throat. Let's talk. I've been given 1 hour for this meeting. I plan to use it. Everyone stopped fidgeting. I looked straight at Samantha. She didn't return the look. She stared at the conference table like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. I waited. The silence hung there, thick and stale. Finally, I asked, tell me something. Have I been a bad husband? A bad father? Have I ever denied you anything you truly needed? Still, she didn't look at me. Samantha. She finally turned her head, just slightly, and rolled her eyes like a teenager caught in a lie. For the briefest moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something behind her face, guilt maybe, or second thoughts. But it passed so fast, I couldn't be sure. Then she laughed. Not a big laugh. Not even a cruel one. Just a soft, dismissive kind of chuckle. Like my questions were foolish. Like the whole thing was beneath her now. Ethan, she said, this isn't about your track record. It's about the money. Of course it was. Everything had boiled down to numbers for her. Not memories. Not values. Just bottom lines. We've been offered $20 million, she said, her voice suddenly smooth and rehearsed. Tyler gets 4. I get the rest. Her tone was flat, matter of fact. Like she was talking about splitting a dinner bill. We're finally getting out of this pathetic little town. You can keep marinating in provincial misery if you want to, but I've had enough of it. That hit harder than I expected. She said it like the place we built our lives in, the community, the neighbors, the school where our daughters grew up, was a dumpster she'd been waiting to climb out of for years. I see, I replied. So you think all this is beneath you now? She smiled without smiling. It always was. You just didn't notice. I turned my attention to Tyler. He leaned back in his chair again, arms crossed behind his head like he was stretching after a good meal. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to. His smirk said enough. That cocky, smug confidence he'd picked up somewhere along the way, probably the same place he picked up the idea that betrayal didn't come with consequences. I looked back at Samantha. And you're okay with how this happened? You're really proud of it. She waved a hand. It's business. You don't get sentimental about business. That's your problem, right? I said quietly. Business. I thought about all the times I'd missed family events because I was pulling late nights trying to keep the company afloat. All the times I turned down better paying offers because I wanted to keep things local, wanted to grow something with meaning. But to them, I was just the guy who built the engine they wanted to drive off in. Tyler finally chimed in, his voice casual. You could have done the same, Ethan. You had plenty of chances to cash out. You chose not to. That's on you. I ignored him. I sat back in my chair and looked across the table at Samantha, then at Tyler. They both wore the same smug expression, like they were already halfway out the door and on a plane to wherever rich people go when they want to forget who they stepped on to get there. I took a breath and spoke calmly, even though everything inside me felt like it was being wrung out like a dirty rag. You know that if you sell the company, you're not just walking away with cash, I said. You're walking away from people's lives. People who've worked here for 20 years, who helped build this with us. If the buyers are who I think they are, all they want are the patents. They'll close the plant within 6 months. Samantha tilted her head, bored. And that means everyone gets laid off, I continued. From the assembly floor to accounting. These aren't just names on a payroll. These are people. You know that. She rolled her eyes. You act like it's my problem, Ethan. Those people bake cookies, run fundraisers, coach their kids' soccer teams. That's fine. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life stuck in that loop, pretending like it's noble. You used to be part of that loop, I said. You helped organize half those events. You brought casseroles to the church dinners. You smiled and talked about how lucky we were to be part of a real community. That was a phase, she replied sharply. I outgrew it. You didn't. I looked over at Tyler. He didn't say a word. Just kept watching me like I was some old dog making too much noise on the porch. Our daughters grew up here, I said. Their friends' families work for this company. Are you fine walking into town after this deal, knowing you cut the legs out from under every household you used to call neighbor? They'll be fine, she said flatly. They'll move on. Maybe they'll finally get out too. This place isn't exactly the land of opportunity. And what about our girls? I asked. What do you think they'll say when they find out their mother helped put their best friend's parents out of work? They won't care, she snapped. They're smart. They're not coming back here. They've already moved on, just like I'm going to. Her words came fast, like she'd been rehearsing them in front of a mirror. She had no guilt, no hesitation. Just pure, calculated ambition dressed up as some self-help breakthrough. You think you're doing them a favor? I asked. By burning down everything that raised them? I think I'm setting an example, she said. How not to settle. I stared at her for a long time, then turned my eyes to Tyler. His arms were crossed, his jaw set. He looked like a man who thought he'd won something. I decided it was time. Tell me something, I said to Samantha. Was Tyler part of the deal from the beginning? She didn't even blink. You mean, was this personal before it was practical? No. But once the offer came in, and we realized we were in a better position together than separately, it made sense. So this was about strategy, I said. She gave me a half smile. Mostly. Once we worked things out between us, it became clear that moving forward without you was just simpler. And what about loyalty? Trust? Friendship? Don't be dramatic, Ethan. You're stuck in the past. I let that sit for a moment. Did you get together with him just for the money? I asked finally, eyes steady on hers. She smiled wider this time. Mostly, yes. Once everything was decided, there was no turning back. We both knew you'd never get past it. I didn't flinch. I think she expected me to. Tyler finally spoke up, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. It's just business, Ethan. Nothing personal. I looked at them both. These were the people I'd once trusted with everything, my family, my livelihood, my future. They sat across from me like it was a Monday budget meeting. Then let's talk business, I said. And I meant it. I reached into my briefcase and opened the thick black folder I'd brought with me. Everything was neatly organized, tabbed, and marked for easy reference. I didn't do that. I'm not that meticulous. Janice, Frank's paralegal, put it together. She was a godsend. I laid the folder out flat and flipped to the first marked section. According to the finalized divorce agreement, I said, my voice steady, any employee of the company who is let go for any reason within the next 3 years is entitled to 1 full year of salary, based on the current pay scale. Samantha's eyes flicked over to her lawyer. Tyler sat forward just a little, like he wasn't sure he heard me right. I continued. The funds to cover this were transferred last week into an independent escrow account, fully funded, fully secured. That account can't be accessed by company officers or ownership, not even in the event of a bankruptcy. I looked at Mark, who nodded slowly. That's correct, he said, adjusting his glasses. The account is managed by a third-party trustee. Non-negotiable. Samantha's lips tightened. She hadn't read that far down. Or if she had, she hadn't thought it through. Tyler shifted in his seat, finally putting both feet flat on the floor. No more lounging. Which brings us to today, I said, flipping to another tab in the folder. I held up the termination document they had just handed me. You've relieved me of my duties as president and CEO, effective immediately. That means I'm now an employee who's been terminated. Nobody spoke. Not a sound. So, I said, tapping the paper with one finger, as of right now, under the terms of this agreement, I am entitled to 1 year's salary. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it. That's $1.2 million, I continued, which will be pulled directly from the escrow account. No delays. No appeals. No interference. Samantha's face went red. She looked like she'd been slapped. Tyler? He looked like he'd just realized he sat down at a poker table without checking how much was in his wallet. Was this in the paperwork? Samantha asked sharply, her eyes turning toward her lawyer. He fumbled through his briefcase, flipping pages. It's in Section 8, I said helpfully. Page 17, paragraph 2. Frank highlighted it. Frank didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His face said everything. Tyler's voice finally made a sound. That escrow is supposed to be for the employees. I am an employee, I said. Or rather, I was. Until you fired me. And by the rules you both agreed to, that makes me eligible for the payout. Samantha leaned over to whisper something to her attorney, but I wasn't finished yet. I didn't make the rules, I added. You both signed off on them when we closed the divorce filing. I made sure every word was approved by the court. The escrow account is legally protected. There's nothing you can do to stop that withdrawal. Mark cleared his throat again, looking directly at Samantha and Tyler now. He's right, he said. The escrow was structured under court supervision. That language is airtight. If you interfere with the payment process, you risk violating a court order. That's not something I recommend. I waited a beat, then slowly slid another set of documents across the table. And here's the punchline, I said. No one reached for the papers. Not right away. Samantha just stared at them like she was trying to decide whether to snatch them up or set them on fire. Tyler looked pale now, his hands clenched together, elbows on the table. He was breathing heavier, like it was finally dawning on him just how far out of his depth he was. I sat back in my chair and waited. Let the silence do the rest. They thought they were clever, thought they could take everything and leave me with scraps. They thought I'd walk away with nothing but a bruised ego. But I'd spent months preparing for this moment. While they were off planning their great escape with someone else's company, I was laying down protections. Quiet ones. Legal ones. The kind that don't make noise until the gavel falls. And now, here we were. All their assumptions, all their shortcuts, all their cocky little laughs, they were starting to crack. And I was just getting started. I took a breath and reached for the final set of documents in my folder. They were clean, freshly printed, and signed with blue ink. I placed them gently in the center of the table and gave them a small push toward Tyler and Samantha. As president of Williams Trust Corporation, I said, I am revoking all licenses for the manufacturing patents currently used by the company. As of the last day of this month, the licenses expire, and you are no longer permitted to manufacture or sell any products based on those patents. It was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then Tyler leaned forward like he'd been stung. What? Samantha snapped her head toward me. What the hell are you talking about? I looked straight at Mark. Can you confirm? Mark, who'd been sitting there like a stone statue, suddenly smiled, just a little. Not smug. Just amused in the way someone gets when they see Karma walk through the door in a suit. They don't own the patents, he said calmly. They never did. The intellectual property for all core products was licensed from a separate legal entity, Williams Trust Corporation. That entity retained full ownership of the patents. The licensing agreement was renewed monthly at a nominal rate. He tapped one of the documents I'd pushed forward. It's all here. This month's agreement expires in a few weeks. And Ethan, as the sole owner and president of the trust, has chosen not to renew. Samantha blinked, trying to process. No, that can't be right. We own the company. We bought it. We have the shares, the building, the staff. You have the building, I replied. You have the staff, the furniture, the bank account, the payroll. What you don't have is the legal right to make or sell any of the products this company is known for. You lost at the moment the trust pulled the license. Tyler sat back in his chair, stunned. This is a joke. You're bluffing. No bluff, I said. That trust has been in place for over 20 years. My dad helped me establish it before I even hired you. It was designed to protect the core technology in case something happened, like a lawsuit, or bankruptcy, or betrayal. I watched the blood drain from Tyler's face. He turned slowly to Samantha. Did you know about this? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at her lawyer, then at Mark, then at me. Her hands were flat on the table now, pressing down hard, like she was trying to keep the room from spinning. You mean to tell me, Tyler said, pointing at the paperwork, that we don't own anything? We've been sitting here acting like we're in charge, and we don't even have the rights to sell the one thing this company actually makes. Mark stepped in again. The trust never transferred those rights. The patents were licensed, not sold. And that license was subject to monthly renewal, which is now being terminated. And this was part of the divorce? Samantha asked, still looking dazed. No, I said. This was never part of the divorce because it was never part of the marital assets. The trust is a separate entity. Legally speaking, it's as independent from our marriage as the power company. Tyler dropped his pen. Samantha stared down at the table, still trying to put the puzzle together, but the picture wasn't changing. You two bought the house, I said, but I took the land under it. I could see the panic settling in now. Samantha sat back, slowly, her eyes flickering as she pieced together what this meant. It meant their golden parachute just turned into a brick. Tyler wasn't as quiet. We've got nothing, he hissed. We're in debt. We've borrowed against projected revenue. We just burned all our liquidity to fund the escrow you demanded, and now we can't even sell a damn thing because we don't have the rights? That's about right, I said. You can't do this, he growled. You're sabotaging the company. I'm protecting it, I said, from people who don't know how to respect it. He looked at Samantha again, but this time there was fire behind his eyes. We're dead in the water, Sam. Do you get that? We don't have anything. We spent everything to buy a company that can't legally operate. Samantha didn't respond. Her eyes were glassy now, her lips tight. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't hear him. Mark cleared his throat one more time. For what it's worth, Ethan had the legal right to do all of this. Everything he's shown today is legitimate and enforceable. You two signed the agreements. They thought they took everything from me, but they never bothered to check what was underneath the surface. They didn't look at the foundation. They didn't read the fine print. They thought I was some worn-down man who'd fold up and disappear. But this company was my life's work. I wasn't going to let it be turned into a pawn in someone else's money game. And now, they were learning the difference between owning a name and owning the rights behind it. Tyler slammed his hand on the table, rattling a glass of water that nobody had touched since the meeting started. His face was red, jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a molar. Do you realize what you've done, Sam? He blurted, not even trying to lower his voice anymore. We can't sell the company. We don't have the patents. We don't have any assets worth a damn. And we're buried in debt. Samantha blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone. She'd been quiet for the last few minutes, visibly shaken after hearing about the revoked licenses. Her confidence had started to melt like ice in the sun, And now Tyler was turning on her like a cornered animal. She swallowed. We still have the factory. He whipped his head around. Which we have to shut down. His voice echoed around the room. I could see the assistants flinch. Even her lawyer shifted in his chair, his calm demeanor starting to slip. Tyler kept going, waving his hand like he was pointing at ghosts only he could see. You think a building matters when we can't make a single product inside of it? The machines, the lines, none of that matters without the rights. And we still have to pay every single person a year's salary. Samantha tried to say something, but Tyler didn't stop. And it's not even money we have. It's locked away in an escrow account we can't touch. We borrowed to fund it, and now we're stuck paying salaries we can't afford for jobs that don't exist. He pointed at me next, practically shaking with frustration. And him? He gets his full payout because of the contract we signed like idiots. I sat still, calm. I didn't need to gloat. They were doing a better job destroying themselves than I ever could have. Then he narrowed his eyes at me. You're a bastard, he muttered, almost like a whisper. It didn't sting. I'd been called worse. Mark, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, leaned forward and adjusted his glasses. Oh, and Tyler, he said, almost too casually, since you were a shareholder from the beginning, that disqualifies you from severance pay. The room froze. Mark continued, his tone still neutral. It's a conflict of interest. Shareholders with executive-level responsibilities at the time of company formation aren't eligible for employee protection packages, as outlined in the agreement. Tyler stared at him, dumbfounded. What? Mark repeated it, slower this time. You were one of the original shareholders. That makes you an owner, not an employee. So no severance. The color drained from Tyler's face. He looked like he'd just remembered a fire he forgot to put out. His mouth opened, but no words came. The guy who had strutted into this meeting thinking he held all the cards was suddenly sitting in a pile of ashes. Samantha sat back slowly and dropped into her chair like her legs had stopped working. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stared at the wall. Maybe it was finally hitting her, what she'd done. What they'd both done. And how thoroughly they'd played themselves. Everything they thought they were getting, everything they thought they could take, it was all smoke. They'd grabbed hold of something that didn't belong to them and realized too late that it was a trap. Tyler's hands were now clenched on the table. His breathing was uneven, and he looked like he was trying to figure out whether to scream or cry. Maybe both. And me? I just sat there a moment longer. Quiet. Letting the silence hang in the air like the last echo after a bell stops ringing. Nobody looked at me anymore. Not really. Even Mark had lowered his gaze. I stood up without saying anything. No speech. No farewell. I closed my folder, slid it into my briefcase, and buttoned my coat. Tyler didn't move. Samantha didn't even lift her head. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and walked out. That was the end of it. Or at least the part they were around for. What came next? That was mine. The weeks after that meeting were quiet. Not in the sense of peace and calm, more like the quiet after a storm tears through and you're standing on your porch trying to figure out where to begin. I wasn't celebrating, not exactly. But I wasn't grieving anymore, either. Something had shifted. I'd spent months watching everything I built nearly collapse under betrayal, greed, and pride. And now it was mine again, or at least, I had a chance to get it back. It didn't take long before the company, what was left of it, was put up for auction. Between the revoked licenses, the shuttered operations, the flood of severance payouts they had to honor, and the mounting debt, Samantha and Tyler had no choice. The business they tried to take had become an anchor around their necks. I watched the process from a distance, stayed quiet, didn't bid on anything right away. I waited. The prices started high, but as weeks dragged on and buyers realized the patents were off limits, interest dried up fast. What was once a valuable company turned into a warehouse full of idle machines and office furniture no one needed. Eventually, I stepped in. Not under my own name, of course. I had my attorney make the arrangements through a holding company. We picked up the production equipment, the lease on the plant, even the company name itself, for next to nothing. I think we paid less than what we used to spend on a single month of payroll. Once everything was secured, I brought back the people. Word spread quick. I didn't even have to post jobs. The ones who hadn't already taken their severance and moved on came back as soon as they heard I was restarting the place. Some had opened small businesses using their payouts, auto shops, catering services, a landscaping company that was already booked through the fall. A few folks decided to retire early, but most? They returned. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. There's something about a team that's been through fire together. They didn't care about shiny buildings or corner offices. They cared about getting back to honest work with people they trusted. We were leaner, smarter, and more committed than ever. Production started again in a matter of weeks. Smaller runs, simpler models at first. But the orders picked up fast, especially once word got around that we were local again and not outsourcing anything. There's pride in that, and customers noticed. People wanted to support something real. Samantha and Tyler, on the other hand, disappeared from the business world completely. Last I heard, Tyler filed for personal bankruptcy. I assume the mountain of debt, combined with the fact that he had no access to severance pay, hit harder than he expected. His name stopped showing up in financial circles. He became a ghost. Samantha left town not long after everything unraveled. Her dream of escaping our provincial little life came true, but it didn't look quite the way she pictured it. Turns out that when you burn every bridge, it's tough to find new ground. A friend of a friend mentioned she was working at a diner off the interstate about 2 counties over. Waiting tables. Wiping down booths. Still wearing her old charm like a badge, but it didn't seem to open doors the way it used to. I sent some money her way. Not for her sake. For our daughters. I didn't want them to worry about their mom getting evicted or struggling to make ends meet. No matter what happened between us, she's still their mother. I didn't tell her where the money came from. Didn't need thanks. Just made sure it got to her through the proper channels. As for my girls, well, they surprised me. I always thought they'd take off after college, chase careers in the city. But after everything went down, they both reached out. They'd heard bits and pieces through the grapevine, but once they saw I had taken the company back, they started asking questions. Then they came to visit. Then they stayed. Now they both work with me. One's helping run operations, the other's diving into product development. Turns out they like the small-town life more than they thought. Or maybe they just appreciate working for something real, something with roots. And me? I found someone new. Or rather, I met someone who never asked what I used to do or how much I used to make. She bakes a mean apple pie from scratch, hikes on Sundays, and knows how to sit in silence without making it feel awkward. She tells the truth. Every time. And she makes me feel like I still have something to offer that isn't tied to a title or a bank account. She laughs at my dumb jokes, reads old paperbacks, and doesn't need to be anywhere fancy. And the best part? She thinks I'm clever. Not slick, not flashy, just thoughtful. Smart in the quiet ways. And that's enough. The company is running again. The people are back. My daughters are building their future right here. And the two who tried to tear it all down? They're gone. Not just from the company, but from the story. I'm not bitter. I'm just grateful I made it through. Sometimes starting over means clearing out more than just space. Sometimes it means finding your footing again with both hands steady on the ground. Share your thoughts in the comments. Who's worse in this story, Samantha, for betraying her family, or Tyler, for betraying his best friend? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.